A lot of you guys may have heard of the QAnon leader named Dave Hayes. I've talked about him before. He is basically one of the foremost figures in the movement that interprets, quote unquote, QAnon messages. So Q used to post a long time ago on 8chan and other places, and he would interpret what these posts were saying, like they were kind of cryptic or whatever. Back in May of 2019, there was this article written about him on rightwingwatch.org. The title of the article was Dave Hayes, Q's promised mass arrests will happen within a year and will destroy the Democrats for a generation. Like I said, this was May 2019. We're a little over 2 years past it now. I guess like 25 months, 26 months, somewhere in there. But I wanted to read this article about it and then watch the accompanying clip to give you a little context for who this guy is, because he's had more to say recently. Just in the past like couple of weeks, he had some things to say on this subject. So let's read this article by Kyle Mentila on Right Wing Watch and see what it has to say. Dave Hayes, a Christian author and online activist known as the Praying Medic, teamed up with Trump-loving MAGA activist Brendan Dilley for a joint broadcast on Saturday, during which Hayes predicted that mass arrests of prominent Democrats and thousands of business, media, and entertainment leaders will happen within the next year, which he said will destroy the Democratic Party for a generation. Hayes has been one of the leading proponents of the QAnon conspiracy theory, which claims that the Trump administration insiders have been dropping hints for years about a supposed plan to take down the deep state and its worldwide satanic network, and his videos promoting and explaining QAnon's cryptic postings have racked up hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube. A key component of his conspiracy theory is the idea that the Trump administration has already filed tens of thousands of sealed indictments that will one day soon be unsealed, as thousands of high-ranking officials are rounded up, tried, and check out this clip that goes with it. This is Dave Hayes next to Brendan Dilley, as the article mentions. Let's give this a watch and see what they had to say for themselves.
Q has often said, especially over the last 6 months, this is going to be the end of the D Party.
Yeah, I believe that.
The end of the Democrat Party. Okay, now, if you are, average person listening, watching Q, like, what do you mean the end of the Democrat Party? The Democrat Party is not going to end. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, this was said in May of 2019, years ago at this point. The things that he's saying are going to happen should have already happened, according to him. He said it like in the next 12 months. Let's keep listening.
What do you mean the end of the Democrat Party? The Democrat Party is not going to end. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain to you how the Democrat Party is going to end. What we are going to see in the next year unrolled is likely hundreds of members of Congress, most of them Democrats, some Republicans. All right, they're going to be arrested and they're going to be prosecuted for corruption. Q said that people in Congress were warned the storm is coming, and they were told, if you are playing the game and you are in Congress when the storm hits, you're going to be prosecuted. Which is why we had a near record number of people who did not run for re-election in 2018.
I love this. They're retroactively going back, and they start with this conclusion, and they work backwards from there. They're finding all of the evidence that they need to prove this conclusion. This is a logical fallacy that they're using. This is a form of bias. Let's keep listening.
Election in 2018.
Little Bob Corker was like, I gotta go.
Most of them Republicans.
Yeah.
Actually, I cut this clip down a lot because this dude on the left, what was his name? Brendan Dilley. He's actually like obviously annoying the Praying Medic here on the right. This is Dave Hayes on the right, the Praying Medic. This guy on the left is obviously kind of frustrating him because he keeps interrupting him with kind of half-assed stupid jokes, but let's keep listening.
The vast majority were Republicans because they knew this. They weren't playing. Yeah. They knew that this was serious. So 55 members of Congress bugged out and didn't run for re-election.
See, Jeff Flake, he mentioned. See, they're going back and retroactively finding evidence to prove the conclusion that they've already come to. When you do that kind of thing, it leads to absurdity. You can find patterns in anything, absolutely anything. You guys remember the face on Mars? The first few pictures, like the first high-res pictures that we got of Mars, I think like in the 90s or something like that, people saw what looked like a face. And there was this massive media buzz about it. Just everybody was talking about the face on Mars, oh my God, there are Martians, blah, blah, blah. Turned out, after zooming in a little bit closer, it was just a mountain range, nothing more. That's what happens when you look for patterns in things, exactly like what this guy is doing right now. They're looking for patterns to affirm what they already believed. It leads to absurdity every time.
Because they were...
I'm out of here. I gotta go.
Jeff Flake and a lot of other people.
I think my oven's on.
They saw the storm coming, and they were like, okay, I'm out. They were cut a deal. You get out, you won't be prosecuted. If you stay in, the hammer's going to fall on you, you're going to be prosecuted.
So I guess they believe that Donald Trump made this deal with them. According to like their interpretations of Q's messages or whatever. I mean, who's going to be dropping the hammer? Nobody else but Trump, right? I mean, he would be the only person in power that they seem to trust that could do something like this. Says the Trump administration insiders have been dropping hints for years about supposed plan to take down the deep state. The Trump administration already filed tens of thousands of sealed indictments that one day soon will be unsealed as thousands of high-ranking officials are rounded up. What happened? What happened? He specifically said in the next 12 months. That's what this guy said. 12 months. And here we are, almost 2.5 years later. It never happened. Is he going to, like, apologize for this? Is he going to admit he's wrong? I mean, what? Give us something here, please. I'll take anything. No, he didn't do any of that shit. Guess what? August 2021, now almost 2.5 years after saying that and being wrong about it, he had something else to say. Check this shit out.
But I think that Trump clearly understood that Biden and the people who are controlling him are fools, number one. Mm-hmm. So you have foolish people who are going to do stupid things. And I think Trump planned on them doing a lot of stupid things. Trump set up the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think that he planned on Biden botching that somehow.
Okay. Why did Trump schedule that to happen during Biden's administration? Why didn't Trump withdraw from Afghanistan 2 years into his presidency instead of scheduling it for 3 months after it ended? Why did he do that? Was it simply because he didn't want the optics? I mean, what's an extra year in Afghanistan going to do? What's an extra 2, 3, 5 years going to do? Nothing. We've been there for 20 fucking years. There's nothing that we could accomplish in the next year that couldn't have been accomplished in the previous 5. It was a waste of our time to be there as long as we did, and a waste of human lives. Why didn't Trump withdraw from Afghanistan completely, like Biden is doing right now, 3 years ago? Why? Because he didn't want it on his record. He didn't want those optics. He put more people's lives at risk and burned through more of the federal money staying there instead of withdrawing just because he didn't want it to look bad on him. That's shameful. But anyway, let's keep listening to Dave Hayes here.
However he was going to botch it. I think Trump knew that Biden would make the wrong moves.
Biden basically followed the plan that Trump had already laid out because it was a pretty straightforward plan already written. I mean, it was just withdrawing people, drawing down troops, pulling them out, bringing them back to the U.S. That's about it. I'm not sure, what Biden did that Trump wouldn't have done that caused this gigantic mess. Like, if Trump had been in power, what would he have done differently that wouldn't have caused a gigantic fucking mess? Please tell me. I'm interested. I'm listening. In the comments section of this video, tell me what Trump would have done differently than Biden that wouldn't have led to a gigantic clusterfuck. Let's keep listening.
I think the opportune time for the military to end the charade would be after Biden has been removed by the 25th Amendment.
Charade. We're talking about a charade now. The military is going to end a charade. What's he talking about?
25th Amendment. Because then if the military stepped in and intervened, if they made the big reveal about devolution, they would not be removing Biden from office. It would not be a military coup.
That's what he's going on about. Now we know. He still believes, delusionally, that the military is going to step in, kick Biden out of the presidency, and reinstate Trump. This guy unironically believes the military is going to make Trump president again.
Because Biden would have been removed from office by Kamala Harris. And if they step in after Biden is gone, but before Kamala is inaugurated, there is no commander-in-chief. You have an acting president, but she hasn't yet been sworn in, right? So if Kamala hasn't been sworn in, you don't really have a commander-in-chief. It isn't a military coup. I think that would be the opportune time. I suspect that that's probably when the reveal is going to happen.
Has this guy been right about literally anything this entire time? I mean, we went all the way back to May 2019, and he was making false prophecies, essentially, back then about Trump basically indicting like tens of thousands of people, you know, these sealed indictments and everything, and all these people being arrested for all this stuff, and the Democratic Party is going to be completely erased off the map because there's so much corruption, blah, blah, blah. None of it ever happened. Here we are, dude is in August of 2021, still making these absurd fucking predictions. Does he ever think to himself, you know, I better not say this because it may actually be incorrect. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I should just withhold the information until I get all the facts. Does that ever cross his mind, do you think? I bet it doesn't. I bet he just says whatever he wants.
The reveal is going to happen. That military will step in, announce what's going on, potentially declare martial law in D.C., make a bunch of arrests, and then whatever happens with Trump returning to the Oval Office, whether it's a new election, whether they just inaugurate him, I don't really know.
This guy lives in a delusional world. Sadly, as one of my commenters pointed out, actually, the guy lives in the same reality as us. He just believes he lives in another and is wielding power and affecting our shared reality. This is a problem. That's not the only clip, though. This guy actually went off about the vaccine of all things. This one was from August also, so not that long ago. Both clips came out around the same time. He was on the Greg Harvey show. So let's check this out.
What if Trump encouraged and allowed vaccine manufacturers, FDA, the CDC, to basically just ignore all of the normal precautions and safety mechanisms and get these vaccines out here, make them publicly available, knowing that they would at some point engage in unlawful conduct?
What? So he's speculating. First of all, speculation is a bad idea. It takes you down a bad road, and you shouldn't do it, basically ever. Speculation serves no useful purpose, and it can only do harm, generally speaking. But this guy is speculating that Trump intentionally allowed people to release something that he fully knew and was fully aware was dangerous and was not being tested enough because he wanted them to break the law and hurt people. That's his speculation? Does he think this makes Trump look good? I don't get what the motivation here would be, but if Trump really did do that, I would want Trump arrested.
Or willful misconduct, you could call it.
Well, they've blown by 2 years of testing, right?
No, that's inaccurate. They have not blown through 2 years of testing. The vaccine did go through its clinical trials appropriately. I remember they were working on a vaccine for this in January of 2020. I remember hearing that Moderna had gotten basically the genome of the virus and was working on a vaccine for it. They already had stuff in production. Basically, the entire wait time that we had for the vaccine was for testing and clinical trials, almost all of it. They already had the vaccine worked out for the most part pretty early on. But mass production was a bottleneck, and the clinical trials was another bottleneck. That's just complete bullshit. Misinformation.
Well, they've blown by 2 years of testing, right?
No.
Right. So if they engage in willful misconduct, the immunity that they normally get is then not available to them, and they are then liable for damages.
Really? So this guy's saying that the vaccine manufacturers are liable for damages, and Trump wanted to set it up that way. Trump is like orchestrating this big, like a fucking puppet master, pulling the strings behind the scenes to make Pfizer and Moderna and all of the other, vaccine corporations pay damages to people instead of preventing misconduct in the first fucking place. Trump could have saved lives by making sure that the vaccine was safe and done appropriately. I mean, it was released under his watch, right? But instead, this guy's saying that Trump actually set out to let these people release something that was dangerous so that they had to pay damages. What kind of fucking nonsense is this? This is a nonsensical mess. This is what happens when you start with a conclusion and work backwards from there. This is what happens. This is where it takes you.
They engage in willful misconduct. I think there's a high likelihood that the vaccine manufacturers have engaged in willful misconduct. And I think that if a couple of plaintiffs knew where to look, they could find that willful misconduct. Mm-hmm. They could go to court, and they could probably get some checks with a lot of zeros on them.
See, this is an unfalsifiable claim. Once again, he's kind of telling us to disprove a negative, if you will. Kind of like the black swan fallacy. There is a problem in here. There's a problem with the vaccine, and if somebody found it, they could sue for the damages. He's basically saying, there's a problem with the vaccine. I know there is, and you have to prove me wrong.
Given the fact that we know that Trump has previously held sort of a dim view of vaccines, it doesn't make sense for him to be pushing the vaccines the way he does.
I don't know if you guys heard about this. Let me just give you a quick primer on it. Basically, Trump has been hesitant to shout out the vaccine for some ass-backwards reason. And some reporters went to a press briefing at the White House recently and asked, what's her name? They asked Jen Psaki, I think, Biden's press secretary, if she would appeal to Trump and ask him to shout out the vaccine. And she basically said anybody with a big platform should be encouraging people to get vaccinated. I'm not going to specifically go to Trump and get on my knees and beg him to. If he wants to be a decent human being and save people's lives, then he'll do it of his own free will. And honestly, I couldn't have possibly thought of a better solution. She's exactly right. The White House should not explicitly ask Trump to endorse the vaccine, because if he came out and endorsed the vaccine after they specifically asked him to, all of his weird little supporters would come out and say, oh, he's only doing it because they coerced him to in some way or some other nonsense. So anyways, Trump comes out and he actually endorsed the vaccine at a rally recently. He was telling people they should get vaccinated and said he got vaccinated. Surprisingly, I couldn't believe that he was saying this. And he got booed. Dude got booed at his own fucking rally for this. It blew me away when I saw this shit. I could not believe, the tail is wagging the dog now. He has lost control of the movement, if he ever even had control. His most ardent supporters only love him because he says what they love to hear. The moment he says something they don't want to hear, they back away. They don't want anything to do with it. They boo him. I couldn't fucking believe that shit. So anyways, that's a little bit of context for what the praying medic here, Dave Hayes, was saying. Let's listen to that little portion one more time.
Given the fact that we know that Trump has previously held sort of a dim view of vaccines, it doesn't make sense for him to be pushing the vaccines the way he does. And, last night I started to think, after listening to Dave, I thought,
Oh, here, you guys ready for this? It's going to come up with another conspiracy theory. This is how they form. You speculate on something that you have no evidence for, no reason to believe. You just start from a conclusion and work backwards from there. Check out his conspiracy.
What if he set them up?
Mm-hmm.
What if this whole thing is a freaking setup to take down Big Pharma, to expose the deception of the CDC and the FDA, and let the public see once and for all how corrupt these institutions and agencies are?
That's a good point.
To me, that makes a whole lot more sense.
That makes a whole lot more sense than Trump is just trying to endorse the vaccine. Really? That's what makes more sense to you? This guy is so completely disconnected from reality, I can't even fucking see him from where I am. Really? What do we do when we have people that believe like this guy? This country is in a bad place right now, I have to say. When we have people like this endorsing ivermectin and shooting down the vaccine, theorizing and coming up with all these conspiracies about why Trump would endorse the vaccine, coming up with every reason in the world except for the fact that the vaccine is actually useful and good. We're in bad shape, guys. I said this earlier on a listener question, but I want to say it again. Don't get too wrapped up in this stuff. I know some of this can be stressful, and some of it can be intimidating and depressing. Don't get yourself down. Don't let yourself get wrapped up in the disappointment that comes with people like this spreading the bullshit that they spread. We just have to keep on keeping on. Do your best and don't worry about the rest. The chips have fallen where they've fallen. We were dealt the hand that we were dealt, and now we have to play it. As an activist, that's all I can do. I have to focus on the next step that's ahead of me. I never let myself get stressed out over things like this because there's nothing I can do to change it except what I'm already doing. So just take one step at a time, take a breath, and keep on keeping on.